There she slept, a perforce little bundle of DNA fighting to organize. She looked and smelled like a lump of dough. Her breathing rattled less than it had when she was born. I could hardly tell she was alive, apart from that relentless ticking. There was an electronic pad tucked underneath her baby mattress that sensed her breathing, translating each inhalation and exhalation into a metronomic tick. These ticks were supposed to be reassuring, but to me they sounded like a countdown. Everything about the last year had been a countdown, waiting to conceive, watching the bump grow, buying everything that we thought we needed. At each stage, I was convinced that the hidden timer would reach 0. I stared at the baby, waiting to feel something. She wasn't born, technically, rather pulled from Elaine's stomach like a weed. That's where Elaine was now, having her stitches tended. I told the baby I loved her, trying to believe it. Coffee. I went to the kitchen and prepared a really strong cup. But we were out of milk. The shop was next door to our flat. I could be out and back before the coffee cooled. Cursing, I grabbed the ticking intercom from the lounge and went out. "Hi, Mo," I said to the Indian guy behind the counter as I entered the corner store. It wasn't always the same guy, but as far as I could gather, they were all called Mo. "Hello, Mr. Franks. How is your little girl?" I held up the ticking intercom. "Still alive." "I always wanted a child," I said, "but I'm not sure I want an infant." I rubbed my face. Milk, that's what I'd come in for. But when it came to paying, I realized I didn't have my wallet. I grumbled under my breath, set down the milk, and scurried out. At the door to our building, I patted my pockets. Patted them again and looked down. I was wearing my pajamas, the powder blue ones Elaine's mother had given me for Christmas. Of course the keys weren't there. I knew exactly where they were. In my jeans, next to my bedside table, on the other side of 2 double-locked doors. The panic started to set in. My first instinct was to walk away, pretend the baby didn't exist, and live the rest of my life under a bridge. Elaine's mother had a spare key. She lived just a few bus stops away. I could call her and be there in 10 minutes. But no, I couldn't call her. My mobile was also in my jeans pocket. Back to the shop. "Hello again, Mr. Franks. You forget something?" "Mo, have you got a phone I could use?" "Not for customers, sorry." "Please, it's an emergency." "Problem with your little one?" "No, it's, can I use your phone, please?" Mo must have seen something in my face. He handed over his mobile. I called Elaine, the only number I could remember. "Hello? Who's this?" "Elaine, it's me. How are you doing?" "Still waiting. You know how it is with hospitals. Waiting, waiting, waiting." "How's the baby?" "The baby's fine. She's asleep. I'm just calling." Why was I calling? What was I doing? Elaine had entrusted me with the baby, and I was about to admit that I was the worst father in the world. "What's your mother's number?" I wanted to call her to thank her for those pajamas. I'm wearing them now. I made a frantic, scribbling gesture towards Mo. It took a few seconds to realize I was asking for a pen. I scrawled the number onto the back of my hand, filled the air with sweet platitudes, and hung up. "That did not sound like an emergency," said Mo. "Shut up, Mo." I dialed Elaine's mother's number. "Hello? Mrs. Leclerc, it's Daniel. What a surprise. How's my gorgeous granddaughter?" "She's fine. Do you have our spare set of keys?" "Yes, dear. They're in the jewelry box at the back of the cutlery drawer." "Could you bring them over, or can I come get them?" "Oh, I'm in Brighton, dear. The Conservative Conference. It would take me an hour at least to get home. And Sebastian's away on business in Monaco. Is it an emergency?" I gritted my teeth. "No, sorry to bother you." I sighed tensely, hung up, and handed over the phone, blinking back a tear. "Thanks, Mo." My name is actually Sukhvinder. I picked up the plastic intercom from the countertop. It wasn't ticking anymore. I shook it, I held it to my ear, straining to listen, Popped the back open, rolled around the batteries. Nothing. Batteries, I barked. Mo fumbled, spilling several packs of batteries onto the countertop as he reached up for them. I grabbed one, ripped it open, levered out the old batteries, and shoved the new ones in. Nothing. I looked up at Mo. His eyebrows formed an inverted V. He covered his mouth with his hand. I ran out of the shop, banged on our front door, then stepped back and ran at it again like a battering ram. Mo came out of the shop to watch as I banged at the door again and again, like a wasp at a window. It wasn't going to budge. I stopped, tried to think rationally, failed. Mo, help! Mo shrugged. I looked up at the windows. Mo, I shouted, give me a leg up! Mo glanced nervously at the door of his shop, then slunk over and held up his hands. I stepped on them, then onto his turban, and heaved myself onto the porch roof. Leaning precariously over the edge, I stared into the nursery window. I could see her, but there was no way of telling whether she was moving. Never before had I appreciated what it meant to have a lump in your throat. But now I felt like I'd swallowed a lemon. Directly over the porch was the lounge window. I braced myself and kicked. It resonated loudly, but it didn't break. I wound myself up for a firmer kick. This time my foot went through the glass. The sound was surprising, a staccato of hollow ringing. Even more surprising was that when I retrieved my leg, a large triangle of glass came with it, embedded in my calf. I staggered, reaching out for something to hold on to, but my leg gave way beneath me. As I fell, I saw every mistake I'd ever made, and I had just enough time to register that none of them had been as bad as this one. Thwack! The pavement tasted salty metallic. I blacked out. I woke with a start, horizontal. Tried to get to my feet, but my leg was braced and my head felt like someone had stuffed it full of nails. I squinted my eyes to try and focus. I was in a hospital, without the baby. A pressure built up in my chest and kept building, like a marching band trampling my rib cage. I was officially the worst father, no, the worst person in the world. If I was on a life support machine, it should be switched off now. I needed to concentrate. I needed to speak to someone. I had to get to a phone. I searched my bedside for an emergency pull cord, thinking this couldn't possibly get any worse. Then it got worse. A familiar figure loomed over me, leaning on a crutch. My heart swelled and fluttered. It was Elaine, wearing a hospital gown. I gawked at her helplessly. She looked crestfallen. "Oh, Danny," she said, "I was just about to have my checkup and I got a call saying you were here. Oh, honey." I wanted to gouge my eyes out with a spoon. "You must have been terrified. Sukhvinder told me all about it." Sukhvinder? Then I saw him. Mo. Sukhvinder. Standing behind Elaine, in his arms, a tiny miracle. My precious doughy baby. He winked at me. "I called your wife on my mobile phone and told her about the burglar who broke your window and attacked you while you were responsibly babysitting." Gingerly, Mo bent down and placed the baby on my chest. He lingered a moment to whisper in my ear. "I called the locksmith, took the baby, and called your wife from my last dialed numbers. You owe me $350 for the locksmith and $4.99 for the batteries." But I barely heard him. I stared at the baby wriggling on my chest. She glowed with life. The thought that I might have lost her, that I might ever lose her, filled me with butterfly panic. She was small and perfect, yet so precarious. I caressed her yielding fontanelle, weeping with joy and apprehension. Mr. Toastmans.